Up next on Eco Company.
Keep your eyes peeled.
We are here to observe and record all the vertebrates, mostly birds.
Students on the hunt for wildlife.
Oh, Dave just moved. We counted about 23 birds and 9 species.
It's all in a day's work for these guys.
Then, teens who aren't afraid to get a little dirty.
Well, I just wanted to come here, represent my school, and clean up this Redwood Grove so more people could use it and show its beauty to the world.
We're heading into the forest to catch up with these guys. They're protecting some of the biggest trees on the planet, giant redwoods.
And planting new seedlings.
We're doing an environmental Save the Bay Day, and we're planting a lot and digging up and watering.
Teens dig deep to restore an ecosystem and help bring this area back to its natural habitat.
All that and more coming up next
On Eco Company.
Hey guys, I'm Adam.
And I'm Jelena. Thanks for joining us on Eco Company.
First up, we've got some Creek Geeks who show us that there's more to nature than meets the eye.
They're climbing through the brush and cleaning up their local riverbed.
They're part of an award-winning program run by students.
Let's go see what they're up to.
Imagine if this was part of your school uniform. Or if you spent part of your day outside with a pair of these.
Oh, Dave just moved.
And how about wrestling with all this? These high schoolers are doing it all, and then some. They're students from Mira Loma High School in Sacramento, California. And they're behind the Arcade Creek Project.
Well, the motto for the past 11 years has been eradication, restoration, and education. And what the Arcade Creek Project is all about is sort of restoring the creek back to how it was before.
It's run by juniors and seniors in the school's International Baccalaureate Science program. Science instructor Dean Karajanis is one of the advisors.
It's a totally student-run project.
Taylor, we need to start right here.
Students are the managers, the leaders.
The goal is to both keep an eye on and clean up this urban watershed that has its share of environmental problems.
Currently, we have a significant amount of invasive species that are found throughout our creek.
Because a lot of the creek water is actually from runoff and irrigation systems by the community, there's a lot of algal bloom and things in the water that aren't supposed to be there either.
That could be anything from like trash to like chemicals that have flown down from people's lawns and stuff.
What transact are we at, 3?
From hands-on field studies,
mission accomplished,
to analysis back at the labs, these guys are taking back their creek.
I see it on her face.
By monitoring nearly a dozen aspects of the creek's ecosystem.
What we do is we map erosion patterns, we find impurities in the creek, and we try to figure out what we can do and what everyone else can do to fix it.
Today we've got the habitat, restoration, vertebrates, long mapping, biological assessment, and chemistry teams ready to show us how it's done. The mappers put these on, because soon they'll be knee-deep in this.
I like being outdoors and such, which is why I chose to do long mapping, because you actually get to be in the creek.
They're wading through the murky water to measure the creek's path.
So we have a tripod, and then we use the rangefinder. There's a laser that comes out of it, and we hit the points on the creek, and then it measures the distance there. So every time the creek curves, we measure another point. And then we connect the lines, and then we have the curve of the creek.
We look at the maps that we've had from last year and compare it to what we would get this year to see where the water has fallen and how the water lines have changed, to sort of see how the creek has eroded and such.
10 meters by 10 meters.
Nearby, the habitat group is hard at work too. It's their job to look at physical features like bank height,
1.1 meter,
tree diameters,
4.2 centimeters,
and foliage.
About 1.2, 1.1.
So we're measuring how far out the branches go out from the tree. It determines how much sunlight enters the area of the creek.
It's really important in determining what kind of species can live here.
They also use this little gadget.
What we have is a piece of equipment called the densiometer, and it's like this little box where there's circles and there's a grid inside. And what we do is we hold it out in front of us and measure the foliage that is overhead.
And then you count how many squares are covered by the branches, and for this one it's 100%.
How many trees you have and what kind of foliage that you have overhead really determines what can live over here.
She's not just talking about plant life, but wildlife too. That's where the vertebrates team comes in.
We counted about 23 birds.
They're armed with binoculars and these.
We are here to observe and record all the vertebrates, mostly birds.
They're looking for large populations of certain species.
That's a way for us to assess the health of the creek because of the indicator species that we have, including the California quail, the magpies, and the acorn woodpecker. So the more we have of those, it's an indication that the creek is quite healthy.
Yep, it's a Nuttles.
If they find more non-native invasive species, that's a sign of trouble. And speaking of invasives, there are plenty of those down here.
I'm part of the restoration group, and what we basically do is we eradicate invasive species.
That's this stuff. They're plants that shouldn't be here because they're not native to the area.
Today we removed catalpa and arundo because they suck up a lot of water and they actually make it really hard for the native plants to survive.
People really need to be careful about what's going down their water drains because most of the invasive species that have sprung out from the creek are because people are just like leaving like the seeds and stuff and it's going down in the drain and it's really affecting the creek.
Now let's talk about what's in the water.
This is where we keep all of our samples.
That's what chem and bio students are studying back in the lab.
I really enjoy being a part of the Creek project because it allows an opportunity to really take a part in environmental reclamation.
The chemistry team checks out water quality. They're testing things like nitrate and phosphate levels.
Right here we're looking at nitrates. It's very important for determining how much plants can grow.
Basically, if we see spikes within those, that is a sign that there must be runoff of nitrate containing compounds, which are things like fertilizers, etc.
Our creek isn't too healthy right now, so yeah.
Another way they can tell how toxic the water is? By looking under the microscope.
So biological assessment looks in the benthic layer of the creek for macroinvertebrates, which are kind of like insect larvae or worms that kind of show how the creek is doing. The thing that we're looking for is this mayfly, which has a low toxicity tolerance. It shows that the creek is less toxic.
So from the lab to along the creek bed and in the water, these students are dedicated to protecting and preserving the planet in every way they can.
This is a very, efficient and wonderful study. It allows us to help out our community.
I thought that before we'd be getting all muddy and gross every time we're out here, but I really like coming out here because it seems like the air is clean and it's fun to be out here with your friends.
It feels really great to be a part of this.
I'm gonna miss it because I really do love this project. I love getting out here and I love doing my small part to help the environment.
It's a passion for the planet they hope to pass on to us all.
The environment is really all we have. I mean, without it, like humans can be nothing. So it's really important for us to really understand that we have to appreciate the environment for what it is and we can't destroy it. It's really important to civilization.
Yeah, I have wonderful kids.
It's estimated that 60 to 80% of all trash that ends up in our oceans starts here on land.
So, what are the top 5 things littering our beaches?
Cigarette butts, plastic bags, food containers, caps and lids, and plastic bottles.
All this trash is bad news for marine life.
Because fish, birds, and mammals eat it, and they can get caught up in it. So what can we do about it? Reduce the plastic we use.
Pick up our trash, especially when we visit our beaches.
And volunteer for community cleanup efforts.
Remember, you don't have to live near an ocean.
Lakes, rivers, and watersheds are important too.
When you do print, always print double-sided. If your printer doesn't allow double-sided.
Coming up, we go among the redwoods, where these guys are trying to clean the place up.
We were cutting down branches from a willow tree and we're putting them into the ground over that hill to help erosion so it doesn't all collapse.
Teens giving up their Saturday to help restore a redwood grove.
More Eco Company is still ahead.
Welcome back. We've been getting some nice, fresh air.
And so is this next group of teens.
They're in a redwood grove in Los Altos, California.
The grove's been around since the 1920s, but it's seen better days.
So they're chipping in to do something about it.
We are going to work you guys today
It's Saturday morning, but you won't find these guys sleeping in.
Grab a shovel or loppers or clippers.
Instead, they're grabbing gloves and garden tools. These teens are members of Brick Brothers, a club at St. Francis High School in Mountain View, California. And they've decided to spend part of their weekend pitching in to restore this redwood grove. Greg Guslani heads up the club.
I used to come down here when I was younger for birthday parties and all that stuff, and then it kind of started to go downhill, and so I'm just it interested me to restore it, get it back to what it used to be.
Over the years, the grove's developed two big problems. One, plants that don't belong here are taking over the area.
We came down here last year and I saw it, and it was all just covered in ivy and just didn't look half as what it used to be.
Two, the creek's bank's in bad shape and could easily flood. It's a situation that threatens the entire ecosystem, and it's something that these teens are here to do something about.
What we want to do is try to dig up the blackberry. This is the Himalayan blackberry here.
Junko Bryant is a restoration director with Actera, the nonprofit group that's organized this ongoing project.
This is one of our projects here, and we bring a lot of, obviously, students and community members out to pull weeds and plant plants.
Neil Ramachandran and Anshul Sitaram are both hard at work.
What made you want to come out here?
Just to help the environment. This is kind of like in our backyards. Well, I just wanted to come here, represent my school, and clean up this redwood grove so more people could use it and show its beauty to the world.
One of their tasks is to get these unwanted plants out of here.
Got it. We just want to take them out so the native plants can regrow here.
The Himalayan blackberry is an invasive plant.
Invasive species threaten the biodiversity by outcompeting native plants that support our wildlife.
Those native plants provide food, like seeds and berries, that birds and other wildlife rely on to survive. All the way down to this guy, the banana slug. Time to give these guys a hand. And it definitely takes some muscle to get all the way down to the roots.
This is the deepest root I've ever dug.
Okay, so getting rid of invasive plants isn't just about protecting wildlife. It's also about protecting these.
The other thing they were concerned about down here that is the health of the redwoods.
These giants need all the water they can get, but invasives absorb a lot of the water in the ground. This is what the redwoods need.
If you look out amongst the trees, there's plants under the trees, there's a ton of leaf litter, which we call duff, under the redwoods. And that's like a good layer of mulch. It feeds the soil, it helps the soil absorb water better.
Now it's time for Operation Creek Bank. It's also been a victim of invasives because their roots don't go deep enough to stabilize the soil. These guys are solving that problem like this. They're shoring up the creek bank using trees.
We were cutting down branches from a willow tree and we're putting them into the ground over that hill to help erosion so it doesn't all collapse.
If you want to come in here and cut.
They're chopping them into 3 and 4 foot pieces. The whole idea is to plant them along the bank where they'll grow into trees. Joan Dudney is also with Actera.
The roots grow really deep and they create a network on the bank that will hold the soil in when there's flash floods or even rain.
Oh, so these will actually grow once they're put in? Wow.
The stakes will grow into new willows if we plant them correctly.
It's definitely work that requires your complete concentration.
You gotta make sure your aim is on for this one.
So from cutting down trees to staking them into the ground and digging up these, it's all in a Saturday morning's work for these guys.
Everyone's kind of in their own shell these days, so just trying to help nature and help these trees continue to grow.
Weekend warriors leaving their mark on the planet.
Coming up, too much salt ruining the environment? That's exactly what happened here.
Eden Landing is a former industrial salt pond, harvesting large quantities of salt for about 100+ years.
But there are teams to the rescue.
I didn't know how drastic the environmental changes were and how much it needed to be helped.
What they're doing to restore this environment. Up next on Eco Company. We've all been told that too much salt can be bad for you.
Well, it's bad for the environment, too.
It can damage entire ecosystems.
As we found out when we visited the former site of an old salt factory.
Bet you can't guess what this stuff is. No, it's not snow, or even ice. It's salt. But it's not the kind you want to sprinkle on your French fries. It's the kind that's polluting this environment.
Eden Landing is a former industrial salt pond, harvesting large quantities of salt for about 100+ years.
Salt water was collected in shallow ponds.
That water would be left out to sit in the sun, and of course, what happens when water evaporates and there's salt in it? Does the salt evaporate too? Nope, salt stays down there, so it would get saltier.
Over time, the salt water eventually crystallized, leaving a bed of salt at the bottom. The process is called solar salt production.
It's very interesting how they talked about how the salt would go from one and they'd move it on to another water and then it'd create more salt and eventually they'd drain everything and get a lot of salt. I never knew that.
All you can see today are parts of its foundation, a few bricks, and some broken glass. But the excess salt left behind isn't good for the ecosystem.
The bay depends on salt in order to, have the kind of ecosystem it does. However, like with anything, too much of it is a bad thing.
Dylan Chappell is a restoration specialist with Save the Bay. The nonprofit group wants to restore the area to its original marshland state.
It's the second largest wetland restoration project in the whole country, behind only the Florida Everglades. 3 or 4 years ago when I first started coming here, there wasn't really very much marsh here.
That's all changing thanks to efforts from hundreds of volunteers, like these students from Village High School in Pleasanton, California. Dylan Morgan, Savannah Simmons, and Jenny Hammer made the trip out here with their classmates.
We're doing an environmental Save the Bay Day and we're planting a lot and digging up and watering.
It's really fun. I enjoy being out in nature.
We just take our digging tools and we dig nice big holes in the ground, put the plants in there. We put these nets around them so they don't get eaten by all the jackrabbits or anything, animals that want to eat them.
These students are putting in a plant called gum plant, and gum plant is what we call a pioneer species, meaning that it does great if it's one of the early things that you plant in an area. It helps keep back the invasive species like mustard and thistle, the things that create poor habitat, ruin the soil, and pretty much just take over.
So why restore wetlands in the first place?
The wetlands for a long time, up until about the 70s or so, were viewed as a wasteland, as a dump. They smelled funny. We didn't know as a population what they were actually doing for us.
They help control floods, filter water, and provide a habitat that wildlife need to survive.
I didn't know how drastic the environmental changes were and how much it needed to be helped.
These guys hope that one day they'll come back to visit a place that looks very different from what it does today.
I think it's very important because it's our planet, it's where we live, and we need to take care of it and make sure that we all do our part to keep it in good shape.
Well, it's our home. It's not only our home, it's animals' homes, and we like the feeling that we've done something good and helped our earth, because one day it's not going to be here, and that it's not a good thing knowing that if we didn't do something, it could have been our fault that the earth's not here anymore.
It just goes to show there's always room for another chapter in the history book, and it's one we can all help to write.
It does matter if just one person is actually helping. Recycling and reusing your water bottles and picking up trash, putting it in the garbage cans and not throwing stuff on the ground, just simple things like that can help save the world.
You could be a part of Eco Company too.
Create your own video.
Shoot a story about being green.
Or somebody doing something unique to help save the planet.
Maybe your school is doing something to reduce its carbon footprint.
Or shoot a video tip showing something all teens can do to help preserve our resources.
Add some music and have some fun.
Then upload your video at eco-company.tv.
Your video could be selected to be on the show.
And you'll get an Eco Company wristband to show that you're committed to helping save the planet.
So join the company, Eco Company.
And be a part of the solution.
More than 1 billion people don't have access to safe drinking water.
It's a huge problem, and here's what some teens are doing to help. Members of Santa Monica High School's Team Marine are recycling cans and bottles to raise money for water purifiers.
When we get 100 cans or bottles and we collect them all up, we can trade them in for a life straw because each recyclable container is worth 5 cents in California.
The straws work by filtering out bacteria and parasites that can make people sick.
It provides fresh water for people who are in need in third world countries.
They are teens making a difference at home and across the globe.
That's it for this week of Eco Company. Thanks for tuning in.
For more on these stories or info about the show, visit us at eco-company.tv.
Or you can check us out on Facebook. But get out and enjoy the great outdoors.
We'll see you back here next time
on Eco Company.